It's Friday, August 23rd, 2024, and this is episode 8 of X Talks. This is the show where we cover trending topics on X, whether it be culture, politics, sports, entertainment, and everything in between. We're talking about it. We're opening this up for discussion. I want to hear what you got to think in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel, like this video, and let me know what you think. So today's video, obviously we're only on episode 8 so far, but this is by far one of the most important videos that I've made so far, and probably will be, maybe up until the election. So, sneak peek, we are getting political today. The trending number one topic on X today is RFK Jr. That's right. Today, RFK Jr. announced he's going to be suspending his presidential bid and throwing his support behind Donald Trump Jr. So this is a monumental announcement, especially off the heels of the Democratic National Convention, which ended yesterday. So what I like to do with these videos, I like to give a little bit of a backgrounder, some context, a little bit of a warning. I am going to be playing more videos than I usually do, but the reason for that is because I want to give you the information straight from RFK Jr.'s mouth from his press conference. We're going to dive into a little bit of the media's reaction to it, which is funny, and we'll go from there. I'll give you my opinions, and then that's going to be it. So let's dive into it. Starting with trending topic number one is Kennedy, for obvious reasons. So here's a quick backgrounder. This is from Raw's Alerts. Breaking, RFK Jr. has officially suspended his presidential campaign and has endorsed Donald Trump for president. Let's listen to this 1 minute and 43 second excerpt from the beginning of his announcement today.
I'm sorry to keep everybody waiting. 16 months ago, in April of 2023, I launched my campaign for President of the United States. I began this journey as a Democrat, the party of my father, my uncle, the party which I pledged my own allegiance to long before I was old enough to vote. I attended my first Democratic convention at the age of 6 in 1960. And back then, the Democrats were the champions of the Constitution, of civil rights. The Democrats stood against authoritarianism, against censorship, against colonialism, imperialism, and unjust wars. We were the party of labor, of the working class. The Democrats were the party of government transparency and the champion of the environment. Our party was the bulwark against big money interests and corporate power. True to its name, it was the party of democracy. As you know, I left that party in October because it had departed so dramatically from the core values that I grew up with. It had become the party of war, censorship, corruption, big pharma, big tech, big ag, and big money. When it abandoned democracy by canceling the primary to conceal the cognitive decline of the sitting president, I left the party to run as an independent.
So that's some pretty powerful stuff coming from the nephew of John F. Kennedy, who was assassinated here in Dallas, Texas in the 60s. So this guy is a lifelong Democrat, comes from one of the most powerful families that the United States has ever seen. So he was obviously alienated from the Democratic Party, and he ran as an independent. But the big surprise today was that he's throwing his support behind Donald Trump. Now, I want to play this clip for you. This is from Bo Loudon. I don't know who that is, but I like to search under the trending topics on X, and this one, it's more about the clip here. But what he's doing is kind of giving you the whole backgrounder as to what the Democratic Party is about. Actually, in this clip, this one, he's just throwing his support behind Trump, but I want you to hear it.
And now, to throw my support to President Trump, the causes were free speech, the war in Ukraine, and the war on our children. And now,
Free speech, the war in Ukraine, and the war on our children. So those are obviously very important to him. It should be very important to all of us. And he formally threw his support behind Donald Trump. Now, this is what I wanted you to listen to, because what we're witnessing in the American political system, I believe, is becoming more alarming, to say the least. When you think about, it's not right versus left anymore at this point. It seems to be authoritarianism versus freedom. It seems to be that it's shaping up that way, because any outsider who's not a part of the machine either gets eaten up by the machine, spitting out, or censored. As you can see here with what happened with RFK, it also happened with Bernie Sanders and other, kind of fringe people on the left. So I want you to listen to this. This one is 1:45, but I think it has some really interesting points that he makes here and kind of paints the picture as to what we've witnessed unfold over the past couple of months here with Kamala Harris.
instead of showing us her substance and character, the DNC and its media organs engineered a surge of popularity for Vice President Harris based upon, well, nothing. No policies, no interviews, no debates, only smoke and mirrors and balloons in a highly produced Chicago circus. There in Chicago, a string of Democratic speakers mentioned Donald Trump 147 times just on the first day. Well, who needs a policy when you have Trump to hate? In contrast, at the RNC convention, President Biden was mentioned only twice in 4 days. I do interviews every day. Many of you have interviewed me. Anybody who asks gets to interview me. Some days I do as many as 10. President Trump, who actually was nominated and won an election, also does interviews daily. How did the Democratic Party choose a candidate that has never done an interview or debate during the entire election cycle? We know the answers. They did it by weaponizing the government agencies. They did it by abandoning democracy. They did it by suing the opposition and by disenfranchising American voters. What most alarms me isn't how the Democratic Party conducts its internal affairs or runs its candidates. What alarms me is the resort to censorship and media control and the weaponization of the federal agencies.
So you tell me where a lie was in that statement. All of it's true. And listen, I'm not somebody who picks a side and goes all in. I'm to be had because I love my country. I love the United States of America, and I want what's best for it. And I need to understand both sides of the argument, because let's be real, you can vote for anybody. We understand that. But the reality of the situation is we are in a bipartisan country, and there really only are two sides that will win an election. So our votes do matter. You do need to vote. And being an educated voter comes with knowing what they're saying on both sides. I watched all 4 days of the Republican National Convention, and I watched all 4 days of the Democratic National Convention. My takeaway from the Democratic National Convention is they seem to play on emotion. They seem to try to capture the hearts and minds of the youth through showmanship, through buzzwords, through social media, through the regular legacy media, and through hatred. Like he mentioned there, they mentioned Donald Trump's name, I think he said 147 times during the length of the convention there. And that's what I noticed too when I was watching it. It's just hate, 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 hate. We hate him. He's the worst. He's a dictator. I mean, you have Michelle Obama and Oprah standing on stage telling you not to trust millionaires and billionaires. They're some of the richest people in this country. So the irony was not lost on me. Now, that's not to say that the Republican Party doesn't come without its faults. But I think the powers that be, whether you call it the shadow government, whether you just call it the Democratic Party, they don't want you to see this kind of stuff. This is dangerous rhetoric to them because it challenges their authority. Listen, whoever's in power doesn't want to give it up. So whenever you're trying to defend your position in a society, you're going to do whatever it takes to stay in that position. So I want to show you a couple more items here. This is, and again, like I talked about with the Democratic National Convention, I didn't hear a lot of policies. I don't hear a lot of policies out of Kamala Harris. I don't hear her saying specific, I will do this to change this. I will, A, B, C to get X, Y, Z done. You don't really hear any of that. So here's RFK Jr. talking about the corruption behind what they call the three-letter agencies, the FDA, the CDC, the CIA, the FBI. So I want you to listen to this. This is just another minute clip here. But again, it's very telling. I think it's very important to listen to.
Agencies, the FDA, USDA, and CDC, all of them are controlled by giant for-profit corporations. 75% of the FDA's funding doesn't come from taxpayer, it comes from pharma. And pharma executives and consultants and lobbyists cycle in and out of these agencies with President Trump's backing. I'm going to change that. We're going to staff these agencies with honest scientists and doctors who are free from industry funding. We're going to make sure the decisions of consumers, doctors, and patients are informed by unbiased science. A sick child is the best thing for the pharmaceutical industry. When American children or adults get sick with a chronic condition, they're put on medication for their entire life. Imagine what will happen when Medicare starts paying for Ozempic, which costs $1,500 a month, and it's being recommended for children as young as 6, all for a condition, obesity, that is completely preventable and barely even existed 100 years ago.
So that's just a fraction, a sliver of the corruption that exists in the government. And I think there's a lot of misplaced hate, and I think it's purposeful on the left side of the spectrum where they kind of encourage the hatred of capitalism. This isn't capitalism. That's an oligopoly. That's companies spending money to influence elections and government. That's not what we want. And obviously RFK and Trump are out there to fight it. So here's another one. This, I think, is the most telling behind the scenes kind of shock value content that you're going to ever see. The legacy media is falling apart. They know that in the age of the internet, you can find the truth, or at least towards the truth, on your own. You can do your own research. That's why they always say, don't do your own research, trust us. Don't do your own research, trust us. Because this is a prime example of censorship. So CNN and all the media, all the legacy media companies did this. It's not just CNN. I just have this pulled up here. But I want to show you what happens when people start speaking the truth and they don't know what to do with it. Check it out.
Alice coup against President Biden. The same shadowy DNC operatives appointed his successor, also without an election. They installed a candidate who was so unpopular with voters that she dropped out in 2020 without winning a single delegate. My uncle and my father both relished debate. They prided themselves on their capacity to go toe-to-toe with any opponent in the battle over ideas. They would be astonished to learn of a Democratic Party presidential nominee who, like Vice President Harris, has not appeared in a single interview or an unscripted encounter with voters for 35 days.
We've been listening to independent candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. from Phoenix outlining what led him to his quixotic quest for the White House to now dropping out and relinquishing the title of Democrat. He had a series of complaints about the party. We're, of course, going to continue watching his remarks. There's a back and forth over whether he's going to endorse former President Donald Trump. We're going to break that down on the other side of a quick break. Stay with CNN.
Well, you would know that he endorsed Trump if you stayed with it and did some honest journalism, CNN. You could tell that they started to panic. You could hear, I could almost hear in his ear there, we got to cut to break. He was talking all straight facts. He was not lying about a single tidbit of information that he was giving there. That is 100% the truth. So this is going to get really interesting. And you may be asking, well, he wasn't the Democrat-elect, so why is this a big deal? Who is voting for him? It's Republican, Democrat. No third parties ever make a huge impact. Ross Perot back in the 90s did some groundbreaking work where he bought television time and literally just sat there with an easel and broke down his plan. That was brilliant. That was the first time the country had really ever seen anything like that, because that was his use of the media for his own personal gains in a very unique way to get his message out there. And he was one of the most popular third-party candidates ever. And then, you saw RFK here, really making a push as a third-party candidate. He was not going to win. We all know that. But I think he knows that as well. But the idea is to create a strong enough base to actually pull at a relatively high percentage. When I say relatively, you're talking maybe 3-4% of the country may have voted for him. But that's a lot more than other third-party candidates have gained in the past. So RFK is influential, especially if you're going to trust the polls, which what am I going to do? Just pretend like they don't exist and ignore them? The polls say it's really close, believe it or not, despite Kamala not ever campaigning, debating, doing interviews or anything. But this is where the importance lies. Check this statistic out. This is from Ian Miles Chong. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, but he's a great follow. Go ahead and follow him if you're not. An internal memo from the Trump campaign shows that RFK Jr.'s endorsement is equal to about double the number of votes he needed to beat Biden in the battleground states in 2020. This is massive. So check this out. Check this chart out. While the data speaks for itself, the table below is from our most recent round of battleground state surveys. As you can clearly see, in every single state, RFK Jr.'s vote breaks for President Trump. Kennedy vote share by state and how they vote in the head-to-head ballot. So currently, RFK Jr.'s vote is 5% in Arizona, Trump's 53%, Harris is 28%, undecided is 19%, so that's a net of 25%. And I'm not going to go through every, you can read that if you like. To put these numbers into perspective, the net vote gained in a state like Arizona based on a 2020 turnout model would be over 41,000 votes, nearly 4 times Biden's winning margin. Or in Georgia, the net gain would be over 19,000 votes, nearly twice Biden's margin. So that's an example to show you how big this decision actually was. I think it's a shame what they did to RFK Jr. You can disagree with me. That's the point of these conversations. Once we stop conversing with each other, if we disagree, that's where the real problems happen. So I'm open to debate. I'm open to hear anybody's opinion. But, my line of thought is I think the Democrats knew that Biden wasn't going to be their candidate. Vivek Ramaswamy called it out in the Republican debates. He said, let's stop this farce. I believe he said, not exactly, but I think he used the word farce. He said, stop this farce. We know Joe Biden won't be running in November. Let's have the real candidate who will be running for president debate. And everyone laughed at him. And I think the Democrats knew all along that Joe wasn't going to do it. They held that debate outside the typical debates last month in order to embarrass him, in order to have an emperor has no clothes moment. They needed to sway public opinion. And that's really the terrifying thing about the media machine's influence over the American people. So I think they had that debate to sway public opinion. As soon as that happened, you started getting top-tier Democrats say, like Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, it's time to step down. It's time to allow the new regime to step forward. But they didn't want to have a primary because they were fearful of somebody like RFK Jr. winning it. So, because he's a populist, he would have done very well, I believe. So they usher in Kamala Harris through a false election. I mean, there was never votes for her. The delegates elected her, and here she is, the candidate. You look at the other side of the aisle, the presidential nomination process for the Republican Party was really intense. You had Nikki Haley, you had Vivek Ramaswamy. Everyone thought that Ron DeSantis was going to be anointed the next king with what he did during COVID in 2020. And you obviously had Donald Trump, and Chris Christie was there, but no one really thought he was going to do anything. But these people bickered. They had differences of opinion within their own party. They had different perspectives and points of views, and it got contentious on the stage. But you saw them, after Donald Trump get elected, support each other again and say it's for the betterment of the country. We're going to throw our support behind each other. That's politics, right? You can't hold a grudge. What's said in the heat of the moment, you're going to say whatever you have to say to win the election. So you saw an actual democratic process on the right side of the aisle to elect Trump as the presidential nominee. On the left side, you saw almost just like an anointment of Kamala Harris. In 2020, she didn't even make the Iowa primaries. She was that unpopular. What has she done in the past 4 years to see the success that she's had to get to this point where you see these legacy news outlets and legacy media saying that her speech was the best thing that's ever happened in recent history. She's the best presidential candidate we've ever seen. I mean, come on. This is pretty wild to see. So this is a monumental moment in our country's history. Understand the brevity of what just happened. You have a man from one of the most powerful families the United States has ever seen switch his parties and throw support behind Donald Trump. This is going to be crazy. We still have about 2.5 months until the election happens. It's only going to get wilder. Like I mentioned previously, people in power or entities in power will do anything they can to stay in power. It's going to be a bumpy ride. It's going to be nuts, but let's stay talking. Let's stay civil. Reminder, that flag, that's what it's all about. We're all one unit here, all right? We can differ in opinions. We can find middle ground. We can find the good in each other, okay? We can disagree with each other and still be friends, believe it or not. I say this a lot. Ask yourself, do you know anybody who thinks differently than you? Is anyone that thinks differently in your friend circle? If not, start evaluating yourself. And I'm not saying one way or the other. You should have differences of opinion. That's how we get better. That's how we get stronger. So thanks for watching. I hope you found this informational. This one went a little long, but I had a lot to say about it, and I showed you a bunch of clips. So make sure to subscribe to this channel here. Not all of them are this serious. I talked about backyard baseball coming back the other day. I have a lot of different interests, and this is a great way for me to just kind of get my thoughts out there and get feedback from people on the internet. I look for strangers' opinions on me. So again, thanks for following, as always, and I will see you soon for another X Talks. I was going to do these Monday through Friday, but sometimes there just isn't something that I really have a passion to talk about or that I know enough to talk about. So I'm going to do them as often as I can on topics that I do find interesting and want to talk about. So thanks for watching, and let me know what you think in the comments. And until next time, my name's Goldie. I'm here in Dallas, Texas, and I'll see you soon for another X Talks. Thanks for watching.